Welcome back, Sebastian here. So today I want to take a look at my expected points model through the halfway mark of the 2025 F1 season. So I know the big Christian Horner bombshell came a couple days ago, but haven't had time to put a nice proper video together for that. That hopefully should come sometime next week. And these are the two videos, the first of two videos, I should say, that I've been working on since our last weekend, the British Grand Prix. So of course, first starting off with number 21, we're going to go in reverse order from 21 all the way to 1 in terms of percentages. So lowest percentage first and then highest percentages at the top. We're going to look at how the drivers have changed, their rank has changed compared to last time. Of course, we do have one new driver, and then we can also look at kind of, race by race graph. So number 21, let's see if we can get this going. Number 21 for this ranking, to start this ranking, I should say, is none other than Franco Colapinto, of course, who had not made his season debut the last time I did this video, which was after race 5. So through his 6 races, I should say, of the 2025 season, points above expected of negative 1.4 or 0%. You can see from the graph the races where he's lost the most points were races 10 and 11. Those being the Spanish and Austrian Grand Prix. Now, number 20 is the driver that he replaced at Alpine, and that is Jack Doohan, negative 0.6. Big difference, despite the fact that they both started 20 races, a big difference between the two is that, for one, I think Colapinto's had slightly higher starting positions, and I think that's kind of played a big role in that as well. And I believe as well for race 3, like you can look race 3, for example, Doohan started from the pit lanes. That obviously would have been a big negative in that respect as well. But for Doohan, drops 2 spots from his ranking at the end of the last time I did this, which was basically 5 races into the season. So number 19, dropping 3 positions from last time, is Yuki Tsunoda, negative 32.7 points above expected, negative 32.7 points below expected, and that comes out at 11%, which for a driver in a front-running team is pretty horrific. When you look at the graph, it's basically just a straight line down, no races where he's in the positive, and it's basically been very, very consistent week in, week out. And again, for Tsunoda, it doesn't look like he's really shown any signs of turning things around. His qualifying performances, he's had races here and there which have been okay, not too far off Verstappen, getting himself into Q3, on a couple occasions getting himself close towards the top of Q2. But yeah, the race day performances have generally been very poor. Now, number 18 is Gabriel Bortoleto, drops 1 position compared to last time, points above expected of negative 5.9 or 40%. For Bortoleto, it's been kind of, similar to Tsunoda, a bit of a steady decline. There have definitely been some races though where that negative is bigger than others. So for example, race 9. And again, he does have that one positive, race 11, where he scored his first points of the season. But based on what we've seen from the sister car of Hulkenberg, again, I do think it has shown that the race pace is there in the car. And I think, Bortoleto's maybe not quite extracting the most of it. Number 17, dropping 2 spots from last time, is Carlos Sainz, negative 14.6 or 47%. A bit of a surprise for a driver who's been, very good the last 4 or 5 seasons or so, driving for Ferrari, and then of course driving for McLaren before that. So definitely a bit of a surprise to see that he's, so far down this list. He has, even races where he scored points, he still scored less than expected, which does suggest that perhaps he's not getting quite the most out of the car on Sundays. Maybe the tire management is not quite as good. I do think also he has had, quite a bit of bad luck. For example, last time out at the British Grand Prix, getting hit by Leclerc towards the end of the race, and that obviously, cost him quite a bit. But he's also had some misfortune of his own making. For example, crashing out at the first race of the season, Australia, and a couple other races, like for example, Bahrain, where he had that kind of unnecessary collision with Tsunoda. But for Sainz, hopefully, he'll be, a bit further up this list, when I do this again, in 6 races time. Number 16, dropping 2 spots as well, is Ollie Behrman. Points above expected of -3.3 or 65%. I think a bit worryingly for Behrman, when you look at the graph, he had really good results early on, but then he's basically kind of plateaued and kind of gotten worse, and as the points above expected have basically gone into the negative over the last 6 races or so. I do think he's gone a bit unlucky. He's finished 11th at, I think, the last 3 Grand Prix. So again, he's been very, very close to being on the verge of points, and he had races like the British Grand Prix where the pace was definitely there, and if he had not gotten that free practice penalty, odds are he probably ends up getting a solid haul of points. So again, really frustrating there, and again, kind of classic rookie season in the sense that the pace is there, but the execution, putting together a clean weekend, is not quite there. So hopefully for Behrman, second half of the season is a bit better. Number 15, probably our first big mover, and that is Liam Lawson. So for Lawson, obviously, those opening 2 races for Red Bull were a bit of a disaster, and you can see big negative decrease there. And then even after that, things weren't so good, and as you can see, the graph kind of gradually declines, goes downward. But 2 really good races, I think, have kind of made him perhaps look a little bit better than his season's been. Of course, those races being Monaco and in Austria. And again, those results have really kind of helped to make it so he's much closer to zero, I should say, compared to when race 6, race 7, which is when there was starting to be a lot of question marks about him before that Monaco weekend. But yes, points above expected, -2.3 or 84%, which is much better than it was for much the previous time I did this video after the quarter mark of the season. Now, number 14 is another rookie, Kimi Antonelli, who is down 4 spots from last time. Points above expected of -6.9 or 89%. And again, a bit similar to Behrman in the sense that he had some really good positive results. Early on in the season, you can see his first 3 races were all positive, but then you start to see some big results in the red. Race 4, Bahrain, that's when he went from 5th on the grid to 11th at the end. And then even the last 2 races in Silverstone, again, not really his fault, but then you have Austria, where he torpedoed Verstappen, and that basically is enough to take him from being about a +4.5 to basically being a -6.9. So I think, again, a couple questions there about Antonelli, similar to Behrman, about maybe things are kind of trending in the wrong direction, but that being said, I think still early days for Antonelli. I think this next 12 race stretch will be really critical for him. Now, number 13 is Isaac Hadjar. Quite the roller coaster ride Hadjar has been on. Points above expected, -0.01, which again, when you do round that up, it's 99.9 or something, so rounding up to 100. And for Hadjar, he's basically dropped 1 place below where he was last time I did this list. And kind of like what I alluded to before, Hadjar's results are kind of all over the place. Big negatives first 2 races, a positive in Japan, another positive in Saudi Arabia, and then of course the 2 big positives, I believe, being Monaco and then Spain, before the last 2 races kind of being gradually negatives, going back down to 0. And that's kind of what happens when you have pretty decent qualifying results. Sometimes it goes really well, like Monaco and Spain, and sometimes when he doesn't put together a clean weekend, that can result in big negatives. So again, it'll be interesting to see how that progresses over the second half of the season for Hadjar. All right, number 12 is Oscar Piastri, also down 1 place from last time. Points above expected, +1.4 or 101%. Now for Piastri, obviously that spin in the Australian Grand Prix first race of the season set him back quite a bit, starting from 2nd on the grid. But of course, you can see that really, really strong stretch from races 2 to races 6, put him back up into the around +8. But last 5 races or so have been a bit of a mixed bag, a bit all over the place. And again, you have a couple of negative weekends there, but you also have a couple of positives. So he's been a little bit above positive. And again, if he can go on another run, kind of like he did from China to Miami, he'll, I think, be in +10, +20 range, and that will also do quite a lot of good for his championship fight. Now, moving up to 11 is his teammate, Lando Norris, down 2 spots. But for Norris, +9.3 or 104%. For Norris, generally positive most weekends. You can see only 2 big weekends in the red. One being race 5, that being Saudi Arabia, where again he crashed out and then kind of had a struggle bit of a struggle, climbing back to the field. And then the other obviously was his big race-ending shunt in Canada from 7th on the grid, which sent him back quite a fair ways. That being said, last 2 races have been pretty good, and that basically takes him from being in the -2 back up into positive range. Now, number 10, going into the top half of our list, our biggest mover since last time I did this is Fernando Alonso. Up 9 spots from last time, of course. When I did this race 5, he had yet to score a point this season. A lot of bad luck, a lot of poor reliability, definitely contributing to that. And you can see from the graph, pretty clearly how that's the case. Anyway, at this point in time, positive 1.8 or 113%. So you can see first 6 races, very, very small, gradual decline. Race 7, of course, was Imola, where, Aston Martin completely screwed up the strategy. Alonso being in a very, very good position on this grid. But then from there, I think race 8, mechanical issues. So again, not basically gets taken out of the equation. But then 4 basically positive weekends in a row where he scored points in Spain, Canada, Austria, and then Silverstone. And 3 of those basically being more points than he would be expected to, and that's enough to carry him back up into the positive after being basically -6 or so at the worst after round 7. So again, things are back on the right track for Alonso. It'll be interesting to see how he continues for the second half of the season, in which is looking like it's a handy Aston Martin towards the front of the midfield pack. Now, number 9 is Charles Leclerc, down 2 spots from last time. Points above expected of positive 19.7 or 121%. For Leclerc, generally pretty positive most weekends. First 5 races of the season were quite tricky. You had negative weekends in Canada and also in Bahrain. But then basically races 8, 9, 10, a lot better than expected. Big positive shoot that way until last time out in Silverstone, where, he had a pretty horrific weekend, which so understandably lost, a boatload of points compared to what was expected there. Now, number 8 is Lewis Hamilton, up 5 positions. He's currently sitting on a positive 15.4 or 121%, very marginally ahead of his teammate Leclerc, and very similar to Leclerc, a bit of a big negative that first race in Australia, and a lot of really positive races such as race 4, that was Bahrain, race 7, that was Imola, and then race 8, that was Monaco, plus last time out in Britain. So again, he's had a pretty positive season with only a couple of races where he scored less than expected, which is generally what we've come to expect last several years from Hamilton. The qualifying pace not quite there, but he's very good at recovering to where he should be and scoring more than you would generally expect for a driver starting where Hamilton starts. Now, number 7 is George Russell, down 2 positions from last time. Points above expected of positive 24.3 or 122%. Russell, the first 5 races of the season, actually, if you go up to race 6, basically just positive straight up all the way. Really, really good results. A couple tricky weekends, races 7, races 8. I believe race 7 was, that was Monaco, and then the race after Monaco. What was the race after Monaco? I'm going to have to look at the calendar. It's been a while. It's been a long day. But regardless, a bit of a dip there. And then, of course, race 10, where he won the Grand Prix, a big positive there. But unfortunately, followed by British Grand Prix last time out, where he, had a bit of a decline, a weekend that was not so good. Made quite a few strategic errors. Now, number 6, the top-rated driver, I would say, from the front of the field is Max Verstappen, in this exact same position as last time. Points above expected of positive 41.3 or 135%. And for a lower front-running team, which is kind of where Red Bull find themselves, 135% is very, very good. So for Verstappen, you can see basically just a straight line positive, basically all the way until race 8, with the exception of race 6, where again he lost out behind the safety car to George Russell. But recently things have been a little bit tricky. You had the race, last 2 races, Austria punted out, Britain, spun behind the safety car, plus I think a car that was absolutely horrendous to drive. And of course you have Spain, where, had a bit of a red mist moment there, and that dropped him down to 10th after his penalty. So again, generally very, very positive season. Last quarter of the season, the second quarter of the season has been very, very tricky, but I do expect, Verstappen to bounce back pretty strongly in the coming races. Number 5, this is Esteban Ocon, down 2 positions from last time. Points above expected of positive 9.4 or 169%. Now for Ocon, the biggest gain for him on a race-by-race basis was race 2, which was China, where he finished 5th, benefiting a lot from 3 other cars being disqualified. But nonetheless, still a really good weekend there for Ocon. And then you can see from there, there's been some up, there's been some down, but generally it's still, even without that result in China, it's still been mostly positive. So again, I think it's been, a pretty good season by Ocon, especially in the races. Now, number 4 is Alex Albon in the exact same position he was last time I did this video, positive 20.2 or 178%. Now, for Albon, he's been very opportunistic with getting really, really big points hauls, big hauls in Australia, even China, and then, of course, the 2 in Miami and Imola, basically contributing massively to his, I think, 42 or so Grand Prix points. And then again, last time out, even when he looked second best to his teammate, still finishes 8th and I think 4 places ahead of his teammate on the road. So I think generally been pretty positive season. A little bit of good luck in there, but still really good from Albon. Now, moving into the top 3 on our list, first is Pierre Gasly, who's up 5 positions, in no small part due to his performance last time out at the British Grand Prix. Those 10 points for finishing, or no, not 10 points, 8 points. 8 points, I should say, for finishing 6th. Big, massive boost up, as you can see from the big blue bar for race 12. But he has had, other pretty good results. Race 4 in Bahrain, as well as race 9, which I believe would have been Spain. So again, positive 9.6, 215% for Gasly. Now, moving into the top 2, number 2 continues to be Lance Stroll. Now, for Stroll, very odd season. He's had his races in the wet where he's looked pretty good, Australia, British Grand Prix, and for the rest of the season, he's basically looked very, very anonymous. And because his qualifying performances this year have been so horrible, even the races where he's basically nowhere, he's not losing that many points compared to expected, because again, when you start every Grand Prix 17th, 18th, 16th, you're not expected to score that many points. But you can see big, massive positive for Australia, China, and then, very, very slow, gradual decline until race 12, where, again, a big boost positive, and that puts him at 11.3 or 338%. If the qualifying performances don't turn around, I think based at, you can kind of extrapolate based on that line. If he continues to get knocked out in Q1 almost every weekend, he will almost certainly score more points than he was expected to for the season as a whole. If the qualifying performances do turn around, let's say he gets into the Q3 a handful of times, has a couple of bad races though, he could easily find himself in the negative. Now, up to number 1, I think no one really, not a particularly big surprise, especially if you watched the last video, and that is Nico Hülkenberg. So for Hülkenberg, 29.1 points above expected, or 469%. A bit of a similar story to Stroll. Really benefited from the Australian Grand Prix, so big positive there. And then a bit of a pointless run all the way until race 9, where again, benefited from some of the circumstances there. Big result in Spain, and then of course, 2 more points scoring finishes in Canada and Austria before, of course, his great result, I'd say almost career-defining result at the British Grand Prix last time out, which again boosts him up, quite a bit even further than that. So there you go. That is a look at my expected points model through the midway point of the 2025 F1 season. Are there any drivers who you're particularly surprised by? Any who you think are doing better than your expectations? So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.